Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Little Nightmares theory. And I know it's been a while since we've actually done, and I say a while, it's probably been like a week. But anyway, I've been ill, I've been pondering, my thoughts have been made clear. And today I have a very special video for you, DLC related. Can we predict the DLC starting point? And can we have a look at any information that has come out that would lead to some more interesting theories? Well, today my friends, I will answer this. And let's get into the theory. Spoiler warnings for you and everyone that already hasn't played. So go and play. But spoiler warnings. Anyway, let's begin the theory. So, we can see from the next DLC chapter that it's called the Hideaway. Also in the description of this, we see that it says that he has to escape the frying pan and then lead to the engine room. But the frying pan bit, to me, is an indication that he did run into the chef's quarters, or the kitchen. So how did he get there? And how did he end up in the engine room? Last we see of him is when he's being dragged off by Roger. So where could he have gone from there, as the kitchen's a bit far away from that point? When we take Six's pathway, one of the options is that he gets wrapped up by Roger and put on a hook heading towards the kitchen, as when we are 6 and we go into Roger's wrapping station, we don't see the boy, but there are children in cages who look similar to him. And this is where we begin our proper prediction for the DLC. So we could assume that if the next starting chapter, the Runaway Kid, started in the wrapping station of Rogers, so because of this, we could say that the Runaway Kid could potentially start in there. And where, you might ask? Well, it could either be two choices. It could either be the cage in which the kids are kept, where there's numerous of the kids, because the sizes are relevant, so it does somewhat work. But what about if it's the cage that we have to slide into? So to escape Roger, we have to slide into that cage right in the middle of the game floor, and it's empty, it's already open. Why is it already open? Maybe the Runaway Kid's already got out of there and exit. And yet again, it is possible to reach the kitchen from that point without having to fall into the shoe pit. So, it's still plausible. So, this is when we start to begin. What if Roger wrapped up the Runaway Kid and stuck him on the hook that leads to the kitchen? When we start the chapter with the chefs in, we come across a bunch of hooks at the start of the chapter. Most of the hooks are empty. Then once in a while, one will come along that's got that huge wrapped white thingy-majig in it. It's not your typical goodie bag, but we know something's in there. And there's one section within this chapter that you find this bag, one of these bags, on the floor, fallen from the hook. Now you need to ask yourself, did it just come loose and fall off? Was it deliberately pushed off? And if you look a lot closer at this specific individual wrap thing, kebab, I don't know what it is, but anyway, it has a slit inside the bag, or on the side, and you can see that a shoe has fallen out of it, and there's a slight small hand coming out of the bag, which implements this in maybe the possibility of the starting point for the DLC, as the boy who is the reason for the bag opening from the inside, or as it came loose. From what I can see, I believe that the Runaway Kid must have cut through the bag or ripped open the bag and made an escape, as it seems rather fitting that we start there in the DLC, because it's not too far in and it's not too far back, and it's a great place to start with two options: one to split and go down where 6 didn't go but she came up, or to go in the same direction as 6. And to elaborate a bit on the going down path, it's one of the sections where 6 may respawn, or it's the spawn into the game, where she climbs up the drain pipe to go towards the hooks to get into the kitchen. I believe the Runaway Kid did the opposite path and went down, but where the drain cover was down for 6, I believe that it was up for the Runaway Kid, giving the alternate path. And it's an easy game design choice to make, as the layout's already there, so it's easier to do. Going down into the pipe makes a lot more sense if the DLC is still based around the engine room, which we know it is, so it makes sense to me. And from an engineering standpoint, where the main source of the ship, or whatever the moor is in particular, the engine would be below the kitchens in the rooms that require sort of heat and utility use. And let's not forget that below the point of the fallen goodie bag, of children that we don't know what. Well, we know there's children in there. There are pipes leading from the bottom up. We don't see it be cut off down, but we see it get cut off from going up. I'll show you what I mean in a visual representation in the video. And then to stray from that point a bit, it also says in the description, one wrong turn can lead to his doom. Only by understanding the gnomes does he have a chance of making heads or tails of all this machinery bearing his way out of the moor. But why are there so many gnomes hiding here? So with that, to me it sounds like he's going to have to use the gnomes to help him with these puzzles. In Little Nightmares, we do see Six, when she hugs a gnome, not only do they follow you, but they do copy you as well. And these are the techniques that the Runaway Kid, I believe, will be using. And it makes sense that if the developers have already got some sort of gameplay mechanic in there, and didn't use it from the original game, why not implement it into a DLC, which would make more sense to me, and I hope to you. But then, that also leaves with another question. Why are there so many gnomes in the engine room? Why did they all want us to question that by putting it in the description? Whenever we see gnomes in Little Nightmares with Six, they always run to fire. Where we light those lanterns, before you light them, the gnomes seem pretty scared, cold, and they just sit there until you do so. So, we know it's not unusual for gnomes to be near fire, as we saw it throughout Six's story. But they ask, why are there so many down there? Seeing as this chapter is called The Hideaway, what if it's not an indication of the Runaway Kid trying to hide away, as we know he's trying to escape? Maybe it's called that because the gnomes are hiding away. It's where they all live together in a warm, hidden place where they are all away from danger and darkness. But I will touch up a little bit more on that towards the end of the video. I always do find the gnomes interesting, as they must have a big part to play in the moor. The moor must have created them, as there are pictures of them hung up all over the moor. When we go into the hidden room, where there's that big eye, and each time you press the button it shows you a view of a room in the moor, there's one of the little secret room where the gnomes are hiding. So they obviously know about the gnomes to keep an eye on them. Get it? Eye? No? Never mind. Anyway, has anyone noticed that the only monster to be triggered by the gnomes is the janitor? I found it strange at first and thought, does he have an issue with gnomes? And why? But then I thought, Roger's blind. He heard them and probably automatically thought it was Six and chased after them. But then this also sidetracks me to another idea that I always had in mind. So take for example Six. So we know at one scene where you have to dodge the eye and it turns you into stone if you get caught in its line of fire. The box that leads us to that secret room with the gnome is open, right? But when we play the DLC, it's closed. So what if the Runaway Kid actually has some sort of influence within the gnomes, is why they've trusted Six after that point? There's also one scene in particular I have with Roger that always sticks out with me in particular. I'll have the gameplay in the background to represent what I'm on about, so you don't get carried away, because I always get lost when I have no visual representation of what I'm on about. Anyway, so you know when we see Roger on one of the sections where you need to climb up his bookcase and he's got all his like mannequin toys about? Well, that section in particular sticks out to me because until you notice Roger, there's like an AI script path that he follows, and if you look very closely, in the corner of the room there is a bag, and this bag is moving. There is something in the bag, and what's odd is if you don't trigger Roger, Roger will go and feel this bag, like as in just like, you know, cup it and be like, you alive in there? So what if the gnomes are in there instead of a cage? Because he seems to separate the children and the gnomes differently, so children would be kept in a cage and a gnome would be thrown in a bag or took back down to the steam room. Now, we're getting towards the end of the video, so there is one more thing I'd like to talk about. And there is a Steam community page, which I will link, as you know, I like to give credit where credit is due. And it's a release of the achievement lists. Now, I do want to go over them briefly, and I will have, yet again, another visual representation in the video. But anyway, let's get into that. So, we can see from the first set of achievements that there are three. First one is the end in sight. second, Anyone Out There, and Ashes in the Moor. So let's begin with End in Sight. I believe that this achievement is just for basically completing the DLC, which is actually quite interesting because if we use this information, we might be able to predict when the next DLC is going to begin as well. As I believe the next DLC, because of this image, could be related to the guest quarter rooms, or somewhere along that type, because what seems to be transferring the Runaway Kid there is some sort of inventory transport, like dirty clothing, certain objects need to go back up and down. It's just basically on a small elevator, which could also be a nod to how the gnomes reach certain sections of the moor as well. And the next achievement is Anyone Out There. Now, I feel like this achievement is just collecting all the collectibles within the level or the DLC, but there's something that triggered me about that sentence or the title, and this might be worth another theory of its own some point, but to me, it hinted at me straight away that maybe these bottles are used to send messages beyond the moor. So maybe like an SOS bottle, you know, like. But that one could be a bit far-fetched, but it doesn't mean it's actually necessarily impossible. Anywho, back onto the most interesting one, which I like to look at very lots, because I like gnomes, they're cool. Anyway, so this achievement is called Ashes in the Moor. Now this achievement is where it gets interesting. So when I first looked at this, I thought nothing of it, and I thought it was just a gnome that was dirty, or had some type of print on it, for example. But upon further inspection, I believe that the gnome is burnt or somewhat toasted. As we know, the DLC is located in the engine room. Also to point out is the symbol of the eye, you know, the eye we see everywhere on the moor is on his head, or the cone. I don't know how to... Anyway... But with this information, this leads me to believe that there is some sort of society of gnomes living with one another. This leads to a bunch of questions which I may touch upon in the future, but for now I'd like to imagine, well, maybe like is a strong word, but what if all the gnomes that we have seen up until, I don't know, the next DLC, so, you know, all our little default cute gnomes that we see about, the ones we made animations about, the ones we laugh about, blah, blah, blah. What if those gnomes are outcasts? Like we see in the achievement picture, there must be a society below the higher sections of the moor, where they continue to live by one big light or heat source, which could be the engine. And if you don't follow the rules or are rejected or reject being branded by this cult of society, you would be exiled and you would be sent above, and this is why those gnomes are untouched. I bet my bottom dollar, or if I had dollars, I have pounds, but that's not the point. But I bet that when we go down into the steam room, there will be a lot of these toasted burnt gnomes, unlike the ones we're used to seeing that are just plain. I also would like to believe that the one with the eye is the overseer of the gnomes. Like, he is the head honcho. I don't think they're all gonna have eyes. To me, that wouldn't make sense, because there needs to be a hierarchy of some sort in this society, and I believe there would be. So the one with the eye is going to be the leader. And I think you're going to get the achievement for meeting the leader. But anyway, guys, I don't like to ramble on that much. But unfortunately, today I have rambled on quite a bit. So I will leave you with that information. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you do think that some of these predictions may come true, please drop a like. And I hate to ask for subscribers, but if you would like to subscribe, please go ahead and do so. It helps me out a lot, and it will help the growth of the channel. And I hope to see your comments below with your own theories, or if you disagree with anything, let me know, and we'll have a back and forth about it. I mean, I'm always open to criticism, anything you like. You might even see my face less in this video because of the feedback that we got last video. So anyway, and also that does remind me of a question I did want to end on. So guys, if I was to, let's say, cut out the pictures of me at like the start of videos and stuff, would you prefer me to do a webcam side of it, or would you just like gameplay and voiceover? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you all in the next video, and I hope you have a fabulous day. I don't know if fabulous was the right word. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. See you later. Bye.